Welcome to AmeriCorps VISTA and the first webinar of your orientation, Countdown to VISTA Service. You're about to embark on a year of AmeriCorps service, and this period before you start is an opportunity to learn about AmeriCorps service, as well as your benefits, and to ensure that this is the right choice for you. My name is Andy King, and I'm joined by Eric Powell. We'll be your hosts today from AmeriCorps VISTA. You'll also see our AmeriCorps colleagues in the chat and Q&A. We have with us today Gina Viner, Christopher Hawks, and Kyle Banker, providing help with your questions. And then our producers from LSI, Steve Gray and Jeff Banas, also to provide technical support. I really loved seeing your comments in the chat before we got started. This is really an exciting time as you're gearing up to start your AmeriCorps year, and I'm really happy to be with you today.
And this is Eric Powell, and I also want to truly add my welcome and thank you for joining AmeriCorps VISTA. I am so happy to meet all of you today. And I really hope that this year will be a powerful experience for you, and I do look forward to helping you get started. In looking at our agenda for today, we're going to start out with brief introductions and an overview of the AmeriCorps VISTA program. We'll then jump into some of the important details of your orientation, including major tasks to complete when you start service next week. We'll take a close look at some of the benefits that you will receive, and we'll address questions on those benefits. And then we'll wrap up today's session with a quick reminder of useful resources for you and ask for your feedback on today's presentation. Let's take a look at an overview of what we want to accomplish today. First and foremost, we have asked you to log on today to give our AmeriCorps staff a chance to connect with you and to help ease you into your year of service. We also know that this webinar is a great way for you to meet other new AmeriCorps members and start to build connections with colleagues across the country, as you've already been doing. We'll also take time today to reinforce some of the very important details of your AmeriCorps service. We know there's a lot of information coming at you from our office and possibly from your project site, and we will highlight several critical pieces of information today. And finally, we want you to leave today's webinar with a really good sense of where to find more answers to questions that you may have. With our limited time online today, we may not be able to answer all of your questions, though we will work hard to do that in the Q&A. Andy, want to kick us off?
Absolutely, Eric. So it's my pleasure to give this official welcome to the AmeriCorps VISTA program. You are joining a national service program with a rich history. There are about 130 VISTA members who will be beginning service with you this month. And currently there are just under 5,000 VISTA members serving in rural and urban areas in all 50 states and several U.S. territories and tribal nations. Volunteers in Service to America, or VISTA, has been fighting poverty and building communities for more than 50 years. Our strength comes from the talent, motivation, and energy of our members like you. So let me thank you for stepping up to share your skills and passion to serve our communities. It truly is an honor for me to welcome you on behalf of the AmeriCorps VISTA program. So in the chat, we have an activity for you. Please take a moment to type your answer to this question. In what city or town will you serve? So, we've got over 100 people on the webinar today, so the chat's going to move pretty quickly. And remember, when you submit your answer, be sure to select all panelists and attendees so that everyone will be able to see. And yeah, it really is a blur of cities and states going by, but I see lots of places in the center of the country, East Coast, West Coast, some islands like Hawaii and Puerto Rico. We've got New Jersey and Kentucky and Iowa and Missouri and Texas and Florida. Yeah, it's always great to see the names of communities, big and small, really from all over the country, which is pretty typical, right? It's representative of the breadth and the scope of the VISTA program. So we know, based on your AmeriCorps applications and your service placements, that we have VISTA members starting out this month in a lot of different communities and in many different types of AmeriCorps projects. So now we have a quick poll question for you. We want to get a sense of how many of you will be relocating to serve. So in just a second, you'll see a poll window pop up on the screen. A quick answer, will you be or are you relocating in order to serve in AmeriCorps? Quick yes or no. After you make your choice, be sure to click the submit button so that it'll get tallied. And just a quick poll here to get a sense of where things are. It looks like most of you, more than 90% of you, have already voted. So I'll give you just one more second or so to get your response in if you haven't already. And I'll mention, and a couple of you maybe have discovered, if you're on a mobile device, you will not see the poll. So a couple of you have entered into the chat, which is great. All right, so it looks like about 32% of you will be relocating, and the rest of you are going to serve in the communities where you already are. So that is great. Thank you for that. And sending very good wishes to those of you who will be relocating for a safe and easy move. So you'll be joining thousands of AmeriCorps VISTA colleagues around the country in the fight against poverty. The VISTA program mission is to strengthen organizations that alleviate poverty, and we do that by deploying members to serve in local community organizations. The role of the AmeriCorps VISTA member is to support the organization's mission by providing solutions that enhance efficiency and build capacity through things like raising money, developing systems, recruiting volunteers, and creating lasting change. So by serving at what we call a sponsoring organization, you are essential to VISTA's mission of strengthening communities. And speaking of your organization, we have another quick chat question for you. What is your project supervisor's name? So if you would just type in their name in the chat panel there. And this could be the person who you interviewed with, probably is the person who interviewed you for the position. And some, depending on how large the project is, there may be supervisors at a couple different levels. But it looks like most of you know and are very easy for you to type in the name of your supervisor, which is great. Thank you for doing that. And if you don't happen to know who your supervisor is, that's okay. As I mentioned, typically the person that you interviewed with for your AmeriCorps position is one of those people. If there were multiple, would be your supervisor, and or it could be whoever's your main point of contact at the organization. At this stage, you may still have to gather some details about your service experience and what that's going to be like, and that could include some details about your site and your supervisor. So let's shift now and take a look at the overall structure for the AmeriCorps VISTA program. So this image here on the screen shows our program structure with the key partners that make your service possible. So you can see there are several layers here that help support VISTA projects and VISTA members like you. So first, on the left side, you see AmeriCorps headquarters, and we're based in Washington, D.C. That's where I work. And AmeriCorps has regional offices across the country. And in those regional offices, AmeriCorps staff review and approve proposals for new VISTA projects, and they approve the placement of members like you into those projects. The regional office is a resource for VISTA members who might have concerns about their assignment that their supervisor is not able to resolve. So you can reach them by email. The easiest way to get them is by using the 2-letter state abbreviation and then at cns.gov. So for example, if you're serving in Texas, it would be tx@cns.gov. So further in the image, a little more over to the right, you see the sponsoring organization. And with that comes your supervisor. So your supervisor and your sponsor will be your day-to-day support, and they'll provide the details on your project work on a day-to-day basis. And then finally, at AmeriCorps headquarters, you'll be supported by the VISTA training unit. That's where Eric and I work, as well as a group called the VISTA Member Support Unit, or VMSU, among some other departments. The VMSU is a helpful resource for questions, particularly regarding things like benefits and relocation. So to help you make sense of these organizations, there is a document called AmeriCorps VISTA Resources and Contacts that's available. You can find it on the Starting VISTA page of the VISTA campus, where I'm sure most of you have already been. And Steve has just pasted the link in the chat, so you can click that if you want to go take a look and bookmark it now. So for your AmeriCorps service, you're making a 1-year, 365-day full-time commitment to strengthen and support your community. You will strengthen, expand, and increase the reach of anti-poverty organizations and programs. And you'll work on projects with staff and volunteers to build capacity in your project and community. Central to your VISTA service is an important document called the VISTA Assignment Description, or VAD, V-A-D, VAD. The VISTA Assignment Description provides the overarching goal of your project, and it explains the objectives that you're working towards during your service. It lays out specific activities that you will complete to accomplish those objectives. All AmeriCorps VISTA members have a VISTA Assignment Description, and you can find yours in the My AmeriCorps portal at my.americorps.gov. It's important to know that your VAD was likely written before you were recruited or selected for the project, so there may be some updates needed before you actually dive into service. Be sure to check in with your supervisor next week and talk about whether any changes would be useful for your VAD. When we meet again on next Monday's webinar, we'll go into more detail about capacity building and the unique nature of your VISTA service. So please make sure you have your VAD ready, or have a copy of it, that is, by your first day of service.
We're going to move now to talk about the next item on our agenda and look at the phases of your orientation to the VISTA program. Today's webinar, Countdown to VISTA Service, is just one part of a multifaceted orientation that all new AmeriCorps VISTA members complete. And on the far left of this graphic, you can see the phases of your orientation and some of the major tasks in the blocks to the right of each phase. This structure is also reflected in the VISTA member orientation checklist that you received via email. And you can also find a link to the checklist in the chat panel now. And we know that some of you may start off by teleserving or serving from home, and whether you do or whether you don't, your supervisor will still be providing you with an on-site orientation and training to guide you as you start your year of service. I do want to strongly encourage you to print or at least save this checklist right away and keep it close at hand, because you can use it as a record of your progress through each phase of the orientation and as you complete important tasks this week and beyond. Starting with the phases of your orientation, they begin with the pre-service phase, which is where you are now. Then they go into your first day of your term of service, and finally what we call in-service. It's good to know that orientation to your AmeriCorps service is an ongoing process and involves quite a few people. We know that your position will be a complex one, and it does take a bit of time and effort to get you started strong. So now we're going to talk through some of the really important elements of the first two phases of your orientation. As part of your VISTA member orientation, you are required to complete several courses and tutorials online. And as you've probably seen by now, these online courses are located on the Starting VISTA service page of the vistacampus.gov, and they must also be completed before you begin service next week. Please note that the Terms and Conditions course is linked to your my.americorps.gov account, so you can certify your acceptance there. You must accept the terms and conditions of service in order to start service as an AmeriCorps VISTA member. And yes, there's a lot to do before you start service on Monday. And again, don't forget, you can keep track of all of your progress on the coursework and the required forms using the VISTA member orientation checklist. And in addition to the coursework on the VISTA campus, you will need to complete your onboarding forms, which include a direct deposit form for your living allowance, federal tax withholding, or what's called a W-4 form, unpaid compensation information, and finally, the end of service benefit selection. All of these forms are located in my.americorps.gov. And if you have not yet completed these, please plan on doing it right away because we need these forms to officially enroll you in AmeriCorps and process your living allowance and other service benefits. There are a lot of member benefits available, and if you haven't done so already, please go through all of the information available on the VISTA campus. In just a few minutes, Andy and I will also talk through some of your benefits and highlight some important details. But first, I do want to mention one really big to-do item on your orientation checklist. You will be required to undergo a background investigation prior to starting service, which includes securely submitting information online to complete a background check at no cost to you. You will receive an email from support@checkr.com with instructions on how to securely submit the required information for the background check. Once you receive the email, you must complete the online background check information within 7 days of receipt. We want to remind you, make sure that your email address in My AmeriCorps is correct because that's where all of our communication comes from. Also, you are required to submit the online background check within 7 calendar days of receiving the email. Failure to complete the background check requirements on time could result in a delay of your service start date, and we really don't want that to happen. If you do have any questions on this process, you can send an email to vistafingerprint@cns.gov. This email address is also listed on the resources and contacts PDF that was shared with you earlier. The other part of this process is comparing your background check results to what you disclosed on your AmeriCorps application. You probably recall that when you applied, you were asked if you were ever convicted of a crime. And certainly, it's possible that maybe you didn't disclose everything in your AmeriCorps application for any number of reasons. If you fail to disclose any conviction in your AmeriCorps application, now is the time to fix that problem. To do that, you will need to fill out the member disclosure form, and you can contact vistafingerprint@cns.gov to obtain a member disclosure form for completion. When your FBI background investigation is completed, we will compare the results to your disclosures in your AmeriCorps application and your disclosure form. If everything aligns, you will not hear from us. If there is a conviction that you have not disclosed to us, AmeriCorps will have extensive follow-up with you and your supervisor to get more details. And depending on the specific conviction, it's possible that you would not be able to serve. Again, we really do not want that to happen. So please be completely upfront in your criminal history questionnaire. We recommend erring on the side of caution so that we can work with you to fully assess the situation.
All right, so now let's talk about getting ready for your first day of service. You'll be serving in a professional work environment, and so you'll want to set yourself up for success there. If you'll be serving on site, you'll want to confirm details such as the address where you need to report and the time that you should arrive on your first day. The dress code of the organization, the parking situation if you're going to be driving, or any other special considerations like average commute time and what's the traffic like, and anything that you might need to bring with you, like if there's paperwork or if you need a photo ID, things like that. If you've been approved to teleserve until it's safe for you to actually serve on site, then you'll want to confirm a start time for Monday and a schedule for your remote orientation and training. If you haven't already done so, you'll want to make sure that your workstation is set up prior to Monday morning. And if you'll be teleserving at any point, whether it's full-time or only on certain days, then please be sure to complete the teleservice agreement form, which is something that you fill out and sign, and then you'll send it on to your supervisor for their signature. Electronic signatures are fine, and the form can be found on the VISTA campus. It's also mentioned on the helpful links handout, so you can find it pretty easily. And if for any reason you're unable to begin your service on Monday, please make sure you contact your supervisor or the AmeriCorps regional office immediately. And you can let me know by responding to any of the emails that you received from me, Andy King. So whatever your situation, don't be afraid to ask questions and reach out to your supervisor. They are there to help you with your onboarding process. So now let's talk about your first day of service. So that's going to be this coming Monday, May 10th. And that day is likely mark the beginning of your orientation to your project site and your specific duties as a VISTA. Your supervisor will likely have prepared a formal agenda for you and scheduled some meetings or other activities. Your day one schedules, they vary from project to project, so you'll want to check in with your supervisor to find out what to expect and what materials you'll need to have ready on your first day. So along with starting your orientation on Monday, AmeriCorps headquarters will present the second webinar for your orientation, and we call that one Launching Your VISTA Service. We'll be back online with you for that webinar. In the East Coast time zone, it'll be from 3 to 4:30 p.m., but it's just the same time as today's webinar, but on Monday. And as with this webinar, you'll receive an email with details for participating. And in that webinar, we'll go a little deeper into the AmeriCorps VISTA program to give you a solid foundation there. We'll talk a lot more about your VISTA assignment description, and then we'll review with you some member resources. We'll also have time then for Q&A, just to make sure you're in good shape for your first week. And let's see. Oh, also on Monday's webinar, we're going to wrap up by administering the oath of service, and that officially swears you in to your VISTA service term.
Another very critical piece of the AmeriCorps VISTA program is the terms and conditions of your service. So we're going to take a closer look at that now. As you know, there's a required course on the VISTA campus that covers the rules of participation in the AmeriCorps VISTA program, specifically what is allowable while you are serving as an AmeriCorps member. And since AmeriCorps VISTA members are bound by a variety of laws, regulations, and other rules, we want to make sure that you understand them from day one so that you can feel comfortable in your VISTA role. If you have already completed the Terms and Conditions course, great job, and our next activity should be an easy review for you. If you have not yet completed the course, this will help underscore the importance of the information in it. So let's talk about what we're going to do. Andy and I are going to present several scenarios and ask you to indicate yes or no in the chat. And feel free to type Y for yes or N for no, make it simple. So here's the first scenario. I can voice my political opinions using social media where my profile identifies me as an AmeriCorps member. Per the terms and conditions, do you think that members are allowed to do this or not? Again, feel free to type Y or N in the chat. And I appreciate a lot of responses coming in. Started out with a variety of yeses and nos. Looks like right now I'm seeing a large amount of no's. One person saying absolutely not, quite a few more no's, some yeses. So it looks like a good variety of people, but definitely more no's coming in toward the end. Give it just another second or two to see if there's any other responses coming in. And let's see, survey says the answer is yes. You can have AmeriCorps listed on your personal social media profile and voice your own personal political opinions as part of your online life. However, and yes, this is the important part, you cannot represent yourself as a spokesperson for AmeriCorps, the VISTA program, or your sponsor. Additionally, you can voice your political opinions on your own time, but not while serving at your site or while teleserving from home, nor while using any of the equipment at your site, including their Wi-Fi network or your office computer. Also be mindful that you should not put the AmeriCorps logo as your profile picture when voicing political or other sensitive opinions on social media. We know sometimes people are unsure or they're in doubt. If you have any questions or are in doubt, definitely be sure to keep your AmeriCorps service and your political activity completely separate.
All right, so we got another one here. Let's see how you do. I can demonstrate in a political rally. So yes or no. And this would be according to the AmeriCorps VISTA terms and conditions. Are you allowed to demonstrate in a political rally? All right, it looks like there's a lot more uniformity here, or unanimity. A lot of yeses and a few caveats there. I see a couple of no's. Anyone else? It looks like the responses are starting to slow down, so maybe people have not responded yet, or they're just not sure. All right, so I think we can go ahead and reveal the answer. So the answer is yes, as most of you indicated there in the chat. And here's why. You can demonstrate in a political rally as long as you do it on your own time, and as some of you noted, that you're not identified as an AmeriCorps member or perceived to be an AmeriCorps member. So it's that perceived to be that's an important consideration, since some of you may be serving in a small town or a community where even when you're not necessarily wearing your AmeriCorps gear, people are going to know that you're the VISTA in town. So when in doubt about a specific activity, it's best to avoid it initially, talk with your supervisor or the AmeriCorps regional office to get some clarification. All right, good job on that one.
Definitely. And here's the next one. I can ask people to donate money to a partisan political candidate as long as it's on my own time and I'm not identified as an AmeriCorps member. Per the terms and conditions, are you allowed to do this? And again, go ahead and type your response in the chat. This activity does not use the poll. It's simple chat activity, yes or no. And we'll leave a few seconds to see what the results are. So far, it's another good mix. Some people adding in comments about not unless you want to violate the Hatch Act. I'm glad a lot of people have done their homework, which is great, which is what we expected. See a few more yeses and nos coming in right down the middle. Give you just another 2 or 3 seconds before we reveal the answer. Okay, the answer is no. You cannot raise money on behalf of a partisan political candidate at any time during your AmeriCorps year. It does not matter if it's off duty or at home or even while not identified as an AmeriCorps member. A federal law called the Hatch Act, which was mentioned earlier, prohibits all fundraising for partisan political candidates. If you like, you can raise funds in support of an issue or cause on your own time and when you are not identified as an AmeriCorps member.
All right, so here's our last scenario. I can have outside employment or earn additional income while serving as an AmeriCorps member. Yes or no? Are you allowed to do this according to the terms and conditions of your service? All right. Your answer is coming in very quickly. It looks pretty unanimous here. And some of you are listing some of the conditions there, right? Around if your supervisor approves and it doesn't conflict with your assignment and it's outside of work hours and it's part-time and it doesn't interfere with AmeriCorps. Great. So you guys got this one. We'll go ahead and reveal. The answer is yes, as you all figured out. You may have outside part-time employment while serving in AmeriCorps. And as some of you started to allude to, there are a few rules and conditions that go along with that. So first, it cannot conflict with your project service or your service hours, nor can it conflict with any applicable law. So it's got to be legal employment, and it can't conflict with the AmeriCorps program requirements or policies. So that's things like scheduling, right? You're not allowed to be an employee of or a contractor for the sponsoring organization or the project where you are assigned to serve. Your supervisor has to approve and agree that the outside work won't interfere with the project and your service. And later on, if it turns out that the work does interfere, then you, as a VISTA member, you may be asked to make a choice, right? Either end or adjust the employment or end your AmeriCorps service. Only part-time employment is allowed while you're serving as a VISTA, and you have to you have to request and approve or receive approval for your outside employment from your project supervisor. There is an outside employment request form, and you can find it, as you might guess, on the VISTA campus. And we have more information about the outside employment policy, and there's a link to it that will show up in the chat in just a second. All right, so thanks so much for going through these scenarios. While the terms and conditions of your AmeriCorps service contains a lot of rules, we know that these 4 issues in particular tend to raise a lot of questions for new members, so that's why we wanted to review them. And also, we want you to feel comfortable getting started as an AmeriCorps member. So please don't hesitate to reach out either to your project supervisor or your AmeriCorps regional office if you have more questions about any of these things that we've just covered. Again, if you haven't done so, you'll need to complete the Terms and Conditions course on the VISTA campus and then indicate that you accept those terms and conditions in your account in My AmeriCorps. And we ask that you get that done by tomorrow.
Well, there are certainly many reasons why you joined AmeriCorps VISTA, as you mentioned earlier, and we know one of the side benefits is the benefits available to VISTA members. So let's talk about some of the details of those benefits. Again, we do want to draw your attention to a few key items today because they are time sensitive, and you'll be able to find a lot more details about all member benefits on the VISTA campus website. This page of the VISTA campus contains an overview of all of your benefits. Some benefits, such as the living allowance, are available to all AmeriCorps VISTA members. Other benefits may only apply to some members, such as child care assistance. So we ask you to make sure that you review all of this information carefully because we're going to walk through some of the benefits, but there's a lot more detail that you will need to explore on your own to make sure that you understand how and when you can use your benefits. So we'll start with the living allowance. From the benefits page on the VISTA campus, you can find a good deal of detail about the living allowance benefit. There are additional links at the bottom of this page under resources, including tips for how to make the most of the living allowance. You will also find a living allowance calendar and access to the living allowance rates. Keep in mind that the rates of pay do vary across the country, so please check out this link to confirm the rate for your area. These links are also included in the Helpful Links handout for today's session. Quick question for you. Do you know when you'll be getting your first living allowance payment? If so, go ahead and type that date in the chat. I'm sure some of you probably know the answer. Some of you may take a guess, but go ahead and type in the chat what you think the date is of your first living allowance payment. This, of course, is an important day for many of you. Not quite as important as your first day of service, but still very, very close. And I'm seeing a couple of different responses, May 25th, May 28th, May 21st. Some people not sure, that's okay. So let's go ahead and reveal the answer just so we can make sure everyone is on the same page. Well, technically you're on the same slide since we're not in a book. I know, bad joke. Anyways, your first living allowance is scheduled to be on May 28th, which is right before the Memorial Day weekend. Most VISTA members are paid directly by AmeriCorps every 2 weeks on Fridays. However, some members are paid by their sponsoring organization directly, and their pay calendar may slightly be different. Your supervisor can tell you if you will be paid by them and then share their pay schedule with you. Federal taxes are withheld from your living allowance, but state taxes are not. You must determine your own level of responsibility for state taxes, so we suggest that you check in with your state tax office for more details. If you are paid directly by AmeriCorps headquarters, you can access your living allowance statements in my.americorps.gov. If you are paid directly by your VISTA sponsor, you'll receive your pay statements from them. And we want to make sure that you receive your living allowance, and I know you do too. So to make sure that you do receive it, it's critical to complete the direct deposit information correctly. It seems pretty obvious, but we'll review this quickly. If either the routing number or the account number you entered for direct deposit is not correct, you will not receive your living allowance payment as scheduled, and you'll have to wait at least 2 additional weeks until the next pay period to be paid. Obviously, by now, I'm sure you know that you can find the routing number and account number on your checks if you have them, or you can go to your online banking site and look at an account statement. You may also want to call your bank just to confirm you have the correct information, because it's critical that you double check that the numbers are accurate in your my.americorps.gov account. We want to make sure you get paid, and so do you.
All right, and then looking ahead, after you successfully complete your AmeriCorps service, you're eligible for one of 2 benefits, end of service benefits, either the Education Award or the cash stipend. The Education Award can be used to pay any qualified federal student loans that you may have, or to pay for future education at any Title IV institution, and that is any institution that accepts federal funds. You have 7 years to use the Education Award, and you don't have to use it all at one time. You can spend it in little amounts however you like. You cannot, however, transfer it to anyone else. Only you can use the Education Award. If you select the cash stipend, that is paid out by direct deposit at the very end of your service term. The most important detail to know is that if you're not sure which benefit you want, then I suggest you select the Education Award, because then you'll have until the end of the 10th month of service to switch to the cash stipend. Once you start service, you're not able to switch from the cash stipend to the Education Award. So it only works in one direction, right? If you choose the cash stipend, it's kind of your final decision. But if you choose the Education Award, you've got flexibility until the end of your 10th month, and you can switch. A lot more details about the Education Award, the institutions that match it, and how you can use it, and all of that can be found on the VISTA campus as well as on AmeriCorps.gov. I want to talk just a little bit more about student loans and that sort of thing, because many of you probably do have student loans. And if you do, there are a couple of ways that you can postpone repayment of a federally backed student loan during your year of service. So if you choose the Education Award, then you can request to put your federally backed student loans into a status called forbearance. And what that means is you don't have to make monthly loan payments during your year of AmeriCorps service. And at the end, when you finish, you can ask AmeriCorps, in this office of AmeriCorps called the National Service Trust, to pay off any interest that accrued on that loan during your year. Just be aware that if we pay off that interest for you, that is considered income for you, and you'll have to pay taxes on it. So federal loan forbearance is not guaranteed, and you have to initiate the process. And you do that by submitting a loan forbearance request in your account in My AmeriCorps. You can't do that now because you haven't yet started as an AmeriCorps member and your account's not active. But next week, probably the middle of next week, your account will be activated, and you'll be able to go into your account, and on the left menu, you'll see a new option that says My Education Award, and you can go there to submit a forbearance request. So let's talk about the other option. If you select the end of service cash stipend, or if you have private student loans, then you have an option that's called loan deferment. And loan deferment is something that you apply directly with your lender.
So you want to make sure you apply directly with your lender if you are doing loan deferment. Sorry about that mishap. Keep in mind that loan deferment is not guaranteed and may not be offered by all lenders, but you definitely want to check with your lender for specifics. And as a reminder, neither of these will happen automatically. You will need to request them through the appropriate process, either in the My AmeriCorps portal or with the bank that holds your loan. So definitely make sure whether you're requesting forbearance or deferment, you understand what the details are. And for more details on everything that we just covered, go to the Ed Award tutorial on the AmeriCorps website, which is, as you can see on the screen, americorps.gov/members-volunteers/Siegel AmeriCorps Education Award. It's a mouthful, I know. That's why we put it on the screen and we send it to you in the helpful links handout. And again, for a quick reminder and recap on the forbearance process, after you officially start service, you can go to your my.americorps.gov account to submit your loan forbearance request with AmeriCorps. Remember, it's your responsibility to submit the forbearance request and check on its status. At the end of your year, it is also your responsibility to submit any education award payment requests, as well as any interest accrual payment requests from the National Service Trust. So another common benefit that's popular to a lot of AmeriCorps VISTA members is healthcare. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. The AmeriCorps VISTA program does offer two different health benefit options. One for members who have health coverage, such as private insurance or Medicaid now, and the other for members who do not have health coverage. So here's how it works. If you have health insurance or other coverage, you are eligible to enroll in the AmeriCorps VISTA Healthcare Allowance, which provides a reimbursement of up to $8,550 for qualifying out-of-pocket healthcare expenses. You can use this healthcare allowance towards out-of-pocket expenses such as co-payments for office visits, services, or prescriptions. You can use it for medications and medical supplies. You can also use it for meeting your annual deductible. This healthcare allowance will not reimburse you for the cost of buying health insurance or paying monthly premiums. On the other hand, if you do not have any health coverage now, you are eligible to enroll in the AmeriCorps VISTA Health Benefit Plan. And this plan is a safety net that covers basic healthcare needs, and it covers many basic services with very low copays, but it does have some limitations and it does not cover pre-existing conditions. There is no deductible for the health benefit plan. Both of these options do include limited dental and vision benefits and also include a teledoc service for phone and video healthcare with board certified and licensed doctors. And both benefit options are free. Yes, we love free. so nothing is deducted from your living allowance no matter which option you choose. And finally, both options only cover you, the AmeriCorps member. To receive a benefit, you must enroll. There is no automatic enrollment. In about 2 weeks, you will get an email from IMG, the International Medical Group, which is the AmeriCorps VISTA Health Plan Administrator, and that email will contain instructions on how you can enroll in one of the benefits. Given this current situation and concerns around testing for COVID-19, the best source for information, of course, is the Center for Disease Control, CDC. Please be sure to follow their guidance on who should be tested and measures for testing. If testing for COVID-19 is recommended, testing is covered under both the health benefit plan and the healthcare allowance. And if an AmeriCorps VISTA member is diagnosed with COVID-19, both the health benefit plan and the healthcare allowance will cover medically necessary care in accordance with the benefit plan. VISTA members who want to seek coverage through the health insurance marketplace can take advantage of a special enrollment period of 60 days from the start and end dates of your AmeriCorps service. To do that, you go to healthcare.gov to shop for plans and see what subsidies you qualify for. And then to enroll for these benefits during a special enrollment period, you will need to call the marketplace. So we're going to briefly segue to talking about public assistance benefits and how they may be impacted by your AmeriCorps VISTA service benefits. If you are already receiving public assistance, such as TANF, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, or LIHEAP, Low Income Home Energy and Assistance Program, then your VISTA Living Allowance or any other payments you receive from the AmeriCorps VISTA program should not affect the level of assistance you receive. Likewise, in applying for new public assistance benefits, your living allowance should not be factored in when determining the level of benefits you receive. The sole exception to this provision is SNAP, formerly called food stamps. If you enroll in SNAP now or at any time during your year of service, your living allowance and other AmeriCorps VISTA payments will be counted as income in calculating your eligibility and benefit level. If you were already receiving SNAP prior to enrolling in the AmeriCorps VISTA program, your benefits should remain unchanged. Public benefits are managed by state or local entities, and AmeriCorps is not involved in how they are administered. So you'll want to be sure to speak with a caseworker for specific advice in these areas. And depending on your location, it's possible that some of these offices have become extremely busy and overwhelmed. So if you feel like you need advice or have questions, just keep in mind that it may take a long time for the state or local office to respond. And in about 2 weeks, you'll be able to access, view, and print what we call service letters from your homepage in my.americorps.gov. When applying for public assistance, you'll be able to print a service letter that cites the authority for what's called income disregard from your account.
All right, let's see. Hopefully my sound is back. So let's talk a little bit about leave benefits. As an AmeriCorps VISTA member, you have certain leave available during your year of service. If you read this, you probably know you have 10 days of personal leave, 10 days of sick leave that are available, but there are some specifics about how to use it, so check out the VISTA member handbook that tells when you can start using them, right? Your first week of service, you can't go on leave, so there are some limitations there. In addition to your leave days, you'll be able to observe the holidays that are recognized by your service site. So for example, if your site observes Labor Day as a day off, then you would have that as a day off. However, you don't get excused for federal holidays that are not recognized by your site. So for example, if your site doesn't give its staff a holiday for Veterans Day, then you will be expected to serve on that day. You and your supervisor will monitor your time and attendance. They'll have a system or a timesheet or some mechanism for you to track that. So your supervisor can give you the details on how to track your time. Likewise, if you have a leave request, if you want to take a day off, you'll send those requests to your direct supervisor. There are some other benefits that are available to AmeriCorps members, And as we previously mentioned, these apply only to some, so some of these might not be applicable to you. These are things like relocation and childcare. So we asked already, and 32% of you are relocating. So if you'll be relocating more than 50 miles from what we call your home of record to where you're going to be serving, or if you'll be relocating within 45 days, so if you've already done it or in the next 45 days you're going to do it, then you likely qualify for relocation travel assistance. And if you're eligible, then you should have already received communication from the VISTA member support unit, and they would have sent you a relocation form for you to fill out and send back. So again, if you've already relocated or you plan to relocate more than 50 miles and you haven't yet gotten that email from the VMSU, then you can inquire by emailing vmsu@cns.gov. So you see that email address there on this slide. So in addition to that, AmeriCorps VISTA offers a child care benefit to members who qualify. And to qualify, there are certain eligibility requirements like household income limits. You also have to be the parent or the legal guardian of a child under the age of 13 who lives with you. For more information and to apply, you go to AmeriCorpsChildcare.com and you see that link on the slide as well. Okay, so I know we covered a lot of information. For many of you, it's probably review. I think you got the message that as an AmeriCorps member, you'll have access to a lot of benefits during the year. And we hope that now you've got a better idea how to find out more about them, where you can get more information, and also some of the action steps that you'll need to take in order to access those benefits. So now let's take a few minutes to address some of the questions about benefits that you've already submitted in the Q&A. We'll pull out ones that we think apply to most everyone on the call. And then if you have a specific question, that we probably don't want to broadcast to everybody, we'll just respond to those individually in the Q&A. And if you haven't had a chance to ask your question, but you have one now, by all means, drop it into the Q&A and we will do our best to get to those. So Eric, I'm going to check with you to see if there are some questions you've got at the ready for us to take on.
I do, thank you. And I'll ask the first question and I'll answer it because it should be pretty easy. There were some people that were asking about how we can be sure that we get credit for the pre-service coursework, and or how can we make sure that we've completed all of the required pre-service coursework and the onboarding forms. So I'll answer that by saying the coursework is on vistacampus.gov. The onboarding forms are on my.americorps.gov. Because of the way the systems are set up, you may not easily be able to determine how you completed them online, but earlier, and we'll post it again later in the chat, there was a link to the VISTA member orientation checklist, and we recommend the best way for you to confirm that you've completed everything is to download that checklist, and you can check things off as you go through them. I will also mention, because of the number of AmeriCorps VISTA members in this orientation and that are starting at this time, we only contact you if you're missing anything. So if you've submitted everything and everything looks good, you will not hear from us. But if it turns out you have any coursework or onboarding forms missing, you'll receive an email from our VISTA member support unit letting you know what's missing, and that'll help you go from there. So hopefully that answers that question.
Great, thanks for that, Eric. Let's see, we've had some questions about sorry, I just lost it here, around the education award. So we'll try to lump some of these together. So first off, can the education award be used only to repay federal loans? And the answer is yes. So private loans can't be repaid using the education award. The way you use the education award is after you finish your service. You have to do all 365 days in order to earn it. Then afterwards, it gets credited to your account in my AmeriCorps. And so you're not going to see the cash in your account, right? I mean, you're not going to get it in your bank. It's going to be held, and you can then indicate through your account in my AmeriCorps where you want to pay it and how much. So, you know, say it's time for your next monthly payment to be due, you can go in and authorize that payment through my AmeriCorps and have that payment go to your lender. There are a couple steps to set up your lender and all of that, so don't wait till the last minute to do it. But that's how the education award will work.
And one question, or a couple of questions I saw that pertain to everyone are around the background check, and some of the questions were about how does the process work. It's pretty easy, thankfully. We've transitioned to a newer process, so either you should have already received or you will soon be receiving an email from support@checkr.com. And again, that email will give you all the details about how you securely submit your online background check information online. So you do it all online. Our VISTA fingerprint criminal history team, our criminal history team has access to view the results, and if they need to contact you, they will. But it's a pretty simple process. And again, don't forget that once you get that email from support@checkr.com, please make sure to plan to complete it immediately. You do have 7 days to submit it from when you receive the email, but the sooner you submit it, the better, just so that way it's in the system, our team can access it, and we can go from there.
Great. We've got some questions about relocation. So I mentioned this thing about 45 days. So we just want to be able to prepare to have funds available to support your relocation. So to do that, we ask, are you going to relocate within the next 45 days? So say, you know right now that it's not going to be within the first month and a half, but later on you will be relocating. It doesn't mean you lose the chance to get that support. It just means you'll need to let us know about 45 days before you relocate so we can set up, you know, the paperwork stuff on your behalf and make sure we've got the funding available there. So it's not that you wouldn't get it, you wouldn't be eligible for it. That 45 days just gives us time to put all the pieces in place so that as soon as you do relocate, it's there. And in terms of the payment for relocation, there are two parts of the payment. One is based on how far you're relocating, a mileage-based amount, and then there's another flat amount that's called the settling in allowance. So the settling in allowance comes with your first paycheck or the first living allowance payment when you start, if you relocate at the beginning, or the first living allowance payment after your relocation is processed. The second amount comes later. You have to actually sign a voucher and send that in. But then with like 6 to 8 weeks after you submit that voucher, you'll get that mileage-based payment. So those are just a couple things about relocation to clarify.
Thanks, Andy. And speaking of money, there was a couple of questions in relation to living allowance and just clarification around taxes. As a reminder, because we are a federal program, federal taxes are deducted from your living allowance. State taxes are not. The federal taxes that are deducted based on how you complete your federal tax withholding or W-4 form in my.americorps.gov. So that W-4 form is what essentially tells the IRS, well, tells us and the IRS how many federal taxes to take out of your living allowance each pay period. And since we do not deduct state taxes, as a reminder, it's your responsibility to work with your state tax preparer or whoever does your taxes to find out if you would owe state taxes. And oftentimes that's based on your annual income. So if you are someone who happens to decide to get outside employment, obviously that also increases your annual income, which may or may not make you liable to pay state taxes. So just keep in mind, we deduct federal taxes, we do not deduct state taxes.
Great. Yeah, I was just skimming through the questions that have come in, and I'm not seeing any that we haven't already covered, although there are a couple coming in. Yep. I'll keep skimming here. Sorry for the little bit of hesitation here. Just want to make sure that we're not overlooking something that is important for us to cover that one of you asked and we didn't get to talk about yet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this was a couple people asked about the health care benefits and when can we sign up for them. So it's kind of like the other things. You can't really do that until you actually start as a VISTA member, and that'll be next Monday. And then after you all start, we have a manual process. We have to go into the system and actually make some updates to your account and activate it. And it's at that time that then things like forbearance requests and applying for your health care benefits and all those other kind of benefits can go into play. So by the end of next week for sure, your accounts will all be set and activated. And for healthcare, you'll get an email from IMG, who administers the healthcare benefits, and that email will really be the key. The email has instructions. They'll have a link. You'll go in and set up an account. They'll give you a little number that you'll use, and that will be your ticket to get started with the healthcare sign up.
And just as a reminder, as we take one last look at the questions, as we mentioned earlier in the webinar, we were talking about most of the benefits that apply to all VISTA members. We know that there's other benefits that may only apply to some that we did not go into detail on because they only apply to some members, but definitely take some time to review the benefits page of the VISTA campus to make sure that you know what other benefits are available and how to utilize them.
All right. Well, thank you all for those great questions. And Eric, thanks for your assistance in answering them. We'll go ahead and wrap up here, but if other questions occur, please drop them in the Q&A. We've got our team there, and they're very quickly responding to those, so they'll get you your answers.
And segueing from what Andy said, we will have more time on next Monday's webinar to answer additional questions specifically in relation to your service. But now we want to take a few minutes to turn our attention to some online resources that are available for you, some reminders for this week before you start service, and then finally a few closing remarks. As we've discussed quite a bit today, there are two websites that are prominent in your service. We've talked about them today. If you haven't done so already, please bookmark these sites so you can easily and quickly access them at any time. And just as a reminder, my.americorps.gov is what we call the My AmeriCorps portal, or sometimes we just call it the portal. And this is the website where you applied for your AmeriCorps position, where you complete your direct deposit and other onboarding forms, and where you can access your VISTA assignment description. It's also where in a couple of weeks, you will be able to access living allowance statements, request some of the benefits that we just discussed, and you'll be able to print or save a service letter that verifies your AmeriCorps service. The other website, the campus, vistacampus.gov, is the website where you complete your onboarding coursework and tutorials. And as we mentioned, we do recommend that you explore the VISTA campus early and often. It's a really important resource to help you navigate your year of service, access additional training opportunities that we offer to AmeriCorps VISTA members, and a whole lot more. And you can see a look at the Learning Resources section to give you a sense of the breadth of information that's available to you. And another great feature of the campus is that you can locate and reach out to other AmeriCorps VISTA members using the VISTA map and the VISTA forums on the VISTA campus.
All right, so in the couple minutes that we have left on our session, I want to offer this reminder about your coursework, onboarding forms, and the online criminal history checks that are due from you. And want to be sure that you can use the VISTA member orientation checklist to help you keep track of the work as you make your way through the list. And finally, we'd love to get your feedback on our presentation today. What worked well for you, and how can we improve this presentation for future AmeriCorps members? So we ask you take a few moments to complete a brief survey. It takes somewhere between 3 and 4 minutes, we think. We will use your input right away as we complete preparation for our webinar next week. And so thank you in advance for sharing your feedback. There is a link in the chat to that webinar survey. With that, I want to review our session overview today. I hope that we've started to build some new connections and maybe put some faces to names, and that we've helped clarify some of the complexity of starting your AmeriCorps service. We know it's a busy time for you and that there's a lot of information for you to take in. I hope that today's discussion helped clarify some of the AmeriCorps requirements and also helped you know where you can find information and get answers to your questions. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar. From all of us here at AmeriCorps, thank you for joining the AmeriCorps VISTA team. We look forward to seeing you again this coming Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern, or whatever that is in your local time zone, for your second orientation webinar. Have a great rest of your week.